Hello and welcome to the world of stories. I'm sure you're here for a bedtime story to help you drift into sleep. And so, let's begin. Aladdin's dad had died years ago, abandoning Aladdin with no education, no job, and no money. And so, Aladdin lived life as a street urchin until there was a knock at his mother's door one evening, and in strolled a tall, turbaned man with a flowing cloak and the longest mustache Aladdin had ever seen. "May Allah be praised! At last I have found you both," the man cried, smiling broadly at Aladdin's mother. "I am Aladdin's long-lost uncle, a wealthy merchant, and I offer my nephew Aladdin the chance to come and work for me and make his fortune." At this, Aladdin's mother's eyes opened wide and round. "I am sure your father never mentioned a brother," she hissed under her breath to her son, "but don't be so foolish as to point it out." And she set about making the merchant truly welcome. Next morning, Aladdin was horrified to find that he was woken up at sunrise, forced to wash and tidy his hair, and pushed out of the doors to begin his new career. Still half asleep, he ran to keep up with his so-called uncle as he strode at a cracking pace through the bazaar, past the harbor, and right into the burning hot desert. "Find some wood and build a fire," his uncle ordered, and from the tone of his voice, Aladdin thought it was best not to argue. His uncle scattered some strange-smelling powders into the flame and chanted words in a weird language. There was a blaze of green fire, and the ground trembled. When the smoke cleared, a trap door had opened in the earth. Aladdin's uncle heaved it open and bellowed at Aladdin, "Go down and find me a lamp." Aladdin was frozen with fear. His teeth chattered and his knees knocked with terror at all that had happened. "You useless boy!" Aladdin's uncle roared, sounding highly like Aladdin's mother. He took a ring from his hand and shoved it roughly into Aladdin's fingers. "This magic ring will keep you safe. Now go!" And he pushed Aladdin through the trapdoor and onto the staircase. Down, down, down into the darkness went Aladdin. He hurried through several gloomy caves and finally reached a beautiful garden. Many trees were growing there, covered in brightly colored fruits. Aladdin couldn't resist picking handfuls of the glassy fruits and filling his pockets and shirt. He gasped with relief as he saw a rusty lamp resting on the grass, and he stuffed that into his shirt too. Then he was off back to the caves. Now Aladdin didn't spend all that time on the streets without becoming very streetwise. He was highly suspicious about his so-called uncle, and of course, Aladdin's suspicion was right. The merchant was in fact an evil sorcerer who knew powerful black magic. The sorcerer's wicked arts had shown him the whereabouts of the cave and the powers of the secret lamp that lay within, and he had worked hard for years to try to find a way in. Eventually, the sorcerer discovered that no one was allowed to enter the cave and take the lamp for themselves. Someone else had to do it for them, someone like a street urchin who wouldn't be missed, because that someone had to remain locked in the cave forever. Now Aladdin could see the sorcerer's eyes glinting greedily down through the square hole that led to the upper world. "Give me the lamp!" the sorcerer barked. All Aladdin wanted to do was to get out of there as quickly as possible. "Help me out first, and then I will give it to you," he shouted back. "I said, give me the lamp," the sorcerer insisted. Aladdin wasn't surprised. "Sure," he yelled, "just as soon as you get me out of here." "Give me the lamp, you stupid boy," roared the sorcerer. Well, that did it. Aladdin hated people telling him he was worthless. "No," he shouted, "I found it, and now I am going to keep it." The sorcerer hopped about with rage, cursing and spluttering. "Then have it," he screamed, "and enjoy it in the darkness forever." He thundered out the magic words, and the trapdoor slammed shut with a massive crash. When Aladdin put his hands up and felt about, the opening was gone. "What have I done?" Aladdin moaned, wringing his hands. As he did so, he happened to rub the sorcerer's ring. There was a blinding flash, and a huge genie stood before him. "I am the genie of the ring," the massive apparition thundered. "Speak your wish, O master, and I will obey." "I wish to heaven I was out of this cave," Aladdin howled. At once, Aladdin found himself back on the sands of the desert, blinking in the hot sunlight. He raced home and blurted out his whole story adventure to his mother. At first, she thought he was telling one of his usual stories, but then Aladdin showed her the multicolored glass fruits and the rusty old lamp. "If we sell these glittery baubles and this old lamp," his mother sighed, "we will at least have some pennies to buy some bread and cheese to go with our soup tonight." "But we won't get the best price for the lamp unless I try to clean it up a bit," said Aladdin. He picked it up and began to rub it with his sleeve. Once more, there was a blinding flash, and a genie even bigger than the genie of the ring stood before him. "I am the genie of the lamp," roared the enormous spirit. "Speak your wish, O master, and I will obey." "Bring us some food," was Aladdin's command. Suddenly, there was a table before them, covered with huge golden platters laden with delicious food. Aladdin and his mother could hardly believe their eyes. In a few minutes, their stomachs were more full than they had ever been in years. And after they'd sold one of the gold platters in the market, their purses were too. After that, the lives of Aladdin and his mother changed for the better. They were clever not to arouse suspicion by selling the golden platters only one at a time. When their purses were becoming empty, no one would have called them rich, although they lived much more comfortably than they had before. And so life would probably have gone on if Aladdin hadn't been caught up in town one day in a great procession. Hundreds of slaves with swords at their side came marching to the bazaar, and in the middle of them, high on the shoulders, was a magnificent litter of gold and silver. As the litter carried past Aladdin, the swishing silk curtains swung just a little to one side, and inside Aladdin glimpsed the beautiful princess Balrabador. From that moment on, Aladdin was headed over heels in love. He couldn't speak, he couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep for thinking of the beautiful Princess Balrabador. Aladdin's mother watched her son grow thinner and paler by the day, and finally decided she had to do something about it, even if it was the most foolish thing she had ever done in her life. She loaded up one of the golden platters with the colored glassy fruit that Aladdin had brought back from the sorcerer's cave, and she went to see the prince's father, the Sultan of Baghdad himself. Of course, the Sultan realized what the jewels were at once, and he had never seen such huge, fine diamonds, emeralds, rubies, and sapphires in his life. Being a greedy man and hoping that there were more where those came from, he agreed at once that Aladdin should marry his daughter and become his son-in-law. Aladdin was overjoyed, and that night he dared to use the lamp once more and conjured up the genie. By morning, a splendid palace with golden domes and pearl spires and 999 stained glass windows had been built exactly opposite the Sultan's own palace. The Sultan clapped his hand with delight. The wedding festivities were held that very afternoon, and Aladdin took his beautiful bride to live in his splendid new home. It was fortunate that Princess Balrabador felt the same way about Aladdin as he felt about her, and together they were completely happy. Until one day, when Aladdin was out hunting, a ragged old peddler came through the street of the bazaar shouting, "New lamps for Ode! New lamps for Ode!" The princess and her maid rushed to the 88th window of the palace to look out on the funny little man who was offering to swap good wares for bad. "How silly!" the maid giggled, and rushed to exchange the rusty old lamp in Aladdin's room. As soon as Aladdin's lamp was in the peddler's hands, he gave a little cry of excitement and disappeared through the streets. A few seconds later, the princess, her maid, and the entire palace had vanished too. As you have probably guessed, the peddler was none other than the wicked sorcerer. Aladdin returned from his hunting trip to find his wife missing, his palace missing, and his father-in-law furious. "Bring me my daughter within 40 days, the Sultan roared, "or I will stuff your precious jewels into your mouth and make you eat them." Worst of all, Aladdin no longer had his wonderful lamp. "What am I going to do?" he moaned, standing all alone in the spot where his palace had once been. He wrung his hands in despair, and as he did so, he rubbed the sorcerer's magic ring. In a flash, the genie of the ring stood before him once more. "Speak your wish, O master, and I will obey," boomed the mighty spirit. "Bring back my palace with everyone and everything in it," yelped the delighted Aladdin. But the genie shook his head firmly and said, "I cannot, master. The palace is under the power of the genie of the lamp." Aladdin thought hard for a couple of seconds, and then his face brightened. "Then take me to my wife," he yelled. Suddenly, Aladdin was standing in his palace in front of his startled but overjoyed wife. "Hurry," Princess Barabadour urged. "The sorcerer is out at the moment, but he keeps the lamp with him at all times. We have to think of a way to get it from him." The quick-witted Aladdin mixed the sleeping powder onto the goblet of wine and gave it to the princess, and then hid behind the screen. Only a few moments later, the sorcerer came striding in, his cloak billowing out behind him. The smiling Princess Barabadour rushed to offer him a refreshing drink, and as soon as the sorcerer had thirstily drained the sleeping potion, he collapsed on the floor in a crumpled heap. Aladdin sprang out from behind the screen and fumbled in the sorcerer's clothes. At last, he held his wonderful lamp in his hands. He rubbed it, gave the order, and in the twinkling of an eye, he, his wife, his palace, and the sorcerer were back in Baghdad. Aladdin and Princess Barabadour breathed a sigh of relief. "I don't know about you," Aladdin said to his beautiful bride, "but I've had quite enough magic for one lifetime. And besides, now I've got you. I've got everything in the world I could possibly want." The princess nodded in her agreement, and Aladdin once more rubbed his wonderful lamp. "I give you your freedom," he told the genie, and in a blinding flash, the overjoyed spirit was gone from the lamp forever. Aladdin and the Princess Barabadour, and of course Aladdin's mom, lived happily ever after. And when the sorcerer eventually woke up, he got what he had always wanted, the rusty old lamp. No more and no less. That's it for tonight. Thank you for listening. Have a great night. Please like and subscribe if you like my contents. I shall update daily and continue with my best efforts. Good night.